Good evening. Welcome to Reflections on East Granby. Today's date is August 4th, 2012. My name is Mike Malloy and I'll be your host this evening. Our guest tonight is Joseph J. Sinicrope, a 70-year-old resident of East Granby. He lives on Nutmeg Road in East Granby. Moved to East Granby in 1975 and he'll be our guest tonight. Good evening, Joe.
Good evening, Mike.
Nice talking to you. Okay. You were born in April of 1942 in Hartford.
Right.
Why don't you bring us up to date on some of your earliest memories, or just share with us some of your earliest memories of Hartford?
Well, I was born in the south end of Hartford.
Okay.
Which is
Little Italy?
gone through some transition since. In fact, the house I lived in is knocked down, and something's been rebuilt in its place. So, the neighborhood. When I grew up, there was a corner drugstore across the street. And,
Okay.
And the gentleman that ran it never wanted anything bigger than a $10 bill. It was the smallest you got.
It was like the $100 bills
Right,
today, right?
right.
Wow.
And we had a grocery store on the corner.
Okay.
And next to the grocery store, there was a tavern.
Okay.
And the guy that ran the tavern didn't like to see little kids in front of his place.
Okay.
He had the nickname the Sheriff.
Oh, really?
Because he chased us away all the time.
He'd shoo you down the road, huh?
Yeah, he chased us
What
away.
street was that, Joe?
Brown Street.
Brown Street.
I
okay.
lived on pretty much on the corner of Brown Street and Franklin Avenue.
Now, that was an ethnic neighborhood in its day? I mean, or was it mixed?
At that point, it was a pretty mixed neighborhood.
Okay, yeah.
There was probably more. I would say there are probably more Italians in part of it.
Okay.
But in general, it was a pretty mixed neighborhood at that point.
Hartford was more like that then, huh? It had its certain ethnic enclaves, but the majority of it was fairly.
Well, yeah. Like when I was in high school.
Yeah.
If you took foreign language, you got a chance to take Italian at Buckley High School because there were a lot of Italians down there. If you went to Weaver High School, you took Hebrew.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so they actually catered to the.
Oh yeah. I mean, you had basic stuff, but then you had a language that
fit
the population.
There you go. Okay, so what are some of your memories of growing up in Hartford? What was Hartford like then?
Well, see, I grew up at the end of World War II.
Right.
So I remember things like having to put all the shades down at night.
Okay.
So the bombers couldn't see any lights, even though there weren't any, or even though there weren't any coming.
So as a 3-year-old, they were still doing the bomb drills?
Oh, they were still doing the bomb drills.
Yeah.
I remember the ration stamps for meat and food and gas.
Wow.
And
so that went on actually a little even after the war, huh? There was some of that.
Yeah. My father got a little bit extra in gas because he worked in a in a factory that was doing some defense work, so they got a little bit extra.
Imagine if people had to do that today, they'd go nuts.
Oh no. Well, there was a black market then. There probably would be one today too.
Right. People make do, but that was a unique time to be born and grow up in the early years.
We even had the air raid drills in elementary school.
Wow.
The ones where
you get under the desk.
Everybody under the desk or against the the center wall of the building, or something like that. Yeah,
pretty vivid memories for young kids. So you grew up in Hartford. What schools did you go to?
I went to Naylor School for elementary school.
Okay.
That was K to 6 at that time.
Okay.
I don't know what the organization plan is now.
Right.
And then I went to Burr Junior High School.
Okay.
That's probably a middle school now.
Okay.
And then I went to Buckley High School.
Okay. So, did you have any other stories you wanted to share growing up in Hartford? Anything you find yourself relating regularly to people about?
Well, a lot of times, being a senior, the people send these emails through. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them. The ones about, we went through drinking out of the hose, and you left. Nobody worried about where you were because some neighbor was watching you and maybe wasn't afraid to discipline you. And I look at all those things and I can remember all those things.
Right.
I mean, there used to be a fellow in the yard next door.
Yeah.
And there was a parking lot that didn't belong to our house and didn't belong to his house.
Right.
But he took it upon himself to monitor what we did in that parking lot.
Right, right.
And if we complained, the parents said, "So what?"
Every block had its sheriff. Every yard had its.
Yeah. You know, things like that.
Don't you think that is a big? This is kind of an aside, but don't you think that is? I always think that's the biggest problem today, is you don't have the dads in the backyard after work. That makes for pretty chaotic neighborhoods if there's not somebody watching the store. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, anyway, so that was so all those things ring true for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to play baseball in the backyard.
Right.
And my dad used to work late, so I used to play with the fellow downstairs and his young kid, and I was a little bigger, and I got to the point where I could hit the ball over the fence into the next yard,
right,
with regularity.
Right.
So he turned me around and made me a switch hitter.
Okay, just to slow you down a little.
So we wouldn't have to keep running over and fielding balls over the fence.
Before you took out the neighbor's window, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Eventually, I learned how to hit him over the fence left-handed.
There you go. So you got good. So you played baseball. Did you play baseball in school?
I played baseball in like a senior league type of thing for a few years. I played basketball.
Okay.
I probably did mostly basketball all the way up.
Okay.
I mean, we were the type of kids, we get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and go to the park. And if we felt like it, we'd go home for lunch, and then we'd walk back to the park and stay until it was almost dark, and then go home.
Yeah, right.
And one of the guys that was in, I don't know if he was in elementary school at that time, but he used to go and shovel off the court in the park in the wintertime to play.
Okay.
Can you imagine kids today going to shovel off the court in the park to play?
No. Well, I think they have other distractions now, so they tend to. That was quite a. You're right. I mean, I can remember playing wiffle ball for hours in the backyard and thinking that was the best thing you could do, and it was. It was fun. So you had you grew up in Hartford. You graduated from Buckley. What did you do after that?
I stayed in Hartford and went to college. I went to Trinity.
Okay, so you went to Trinity.
So I walked to high school. I walked to college until I got a car.
And that Brown Street's pretty close to Trinity. So.
Not that close.
That's actually right. It's like 7 or 8 blocks.
It was a bit of a hike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're down
uphill against the wind all the time.
Yeah, up against the rocks. Right? So you had. So what did you get what did you go to Trinity for? What was your?
I got a degree in economics.
Okay. So a degree in economics, and what did you do with that degree?
I became a social studies teacher in Suffield High School.
Okay. Did you intend to be a teacher when you started school, or was that?
Well, when I was in junior high school, I was able to help other kids learn stuff that they were having difficulty learning. So I thought I had a skill at it.
So you saw
when I, along with the economics degree, I did all the things I needed to get a teaching certificate.
Okay. So what was entailed to get that certificate then? Was it it was complicated than today?
It was a lot less complicated.
Yeah.
I think there were, in terms of education courses, I think there were probably like 3 or 4 required courses.
Okay.
Plus student teaching.
So it was more on the job training, basically. You student taught.
With the teaching skills, it was.
Yeah.
There were still course requirements.
You still had to have an academic.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the interesting thing is that when I graduated, I didn't have a job.
Okay.
And I was all set to go into the family contracting business.
Right.
And I got married in July, and when my honeymoon came back, my mother called and said, "Somebody from Suffield called you. They want you to go out there for an interview."
Okay.
And I went out there. The only time I ever filled out an application was after they told me I had the job.
So did you apply there, or did you?
I had never applied there.
So they found you. They must have got a list of the.
Well, what I did was, I applied in all the towns that bordered Hartford.
Okay, all right.
So what I figured happened was that the superintendent in Suffield, probably, I think he knew the superintendent in Bloomfield where I had applied.
Okay, so they shared applications.
And they said, "Here, try this guy." And
That was
I went out there and I stayed there for 36 years.
Those were the explosive years of education. They were hiring teachers left and right back then. That was the baby boomers were coming into the mix. Is that accurate?
Yeah. But social studies jobs were hard to find then, like they are now.
Okay.
If you were a math teacher or science teacher or something like that, you could almost write your own ticket all the way through.
Okay, so you're still fairly fortunate to get a position.
Yeah, but then I eventually went back and got certified to teach math too.
Oh wow, okay. So you didn't stop there.
So then when hard times came, I was close to indispensable because people that taught social studies and math were very rare.
Yeah, right. That is a strange combination, right? Or a unique combination.
Yeah, it's a unique combination.
So getting back to your hitting from both sides of the plate, right? You were a switch hitter as a kid. You learned how to do it. So basically, when you graduated Trinity, what year was that? What was that would have been
1964.
So 64, that would have been so you started teaching in 65, was that?
No, I started teaching in September of 64.
So right out of college.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So what getting back to your family real quickly, what did your parents, you said the contractors, what did they do? What did your parents do?
My father and his two brothers were in the roofing and siding business.
Okay.
My two uncles were the salesmen, and my father was the working part of the organization.
Okay,
so very early I learned a lot of skills.
So the post-war building boom, they kind of built.
So I started working in that business. Well, if you don't count the time he put me up on a roof when I was 3, I started when I was 14.
Okay. So your mom took you off the roof at 3, I guess. You weren't going back.
Well, no, I was up. This was after the war.
Okay.
It was right after the war when everything made in Japan wasn't good.
Yeah, even when I was a kid.
And I was up there swinging a hammer, and I was knocking the heads off the nails, and I was yelling, "Hey, Dad, knocking the heads off!" Shh.
Oh no, he didn't want to. He didn't want to publicize that.
Yeah, so that was one of the things. That was one of the things I learned how to do, and I eventually, that became my summer job for most of the time that I was teaching.
Okay, so you worked right through the summer.
Yeah, I became a contractor myself.
Okay, so teaching, did you teach your whole career in Suffield? Was that?
Yep.
Okay, so you started teaching there in 64. Okay, and what were the changes? I mean, you taught there through what year? What year did you retire from Suffield?
2000.
So you taught 36 years in the school system. What were the biggest changes you saw there? That's quite a a slice of history there that you saw, the evolution of education. What were the biggest changes that you saw?
I don't know, because I don't know if I could identify any particular one.
Right.
I mean, it was probably what happened was there was maybe a little bit less discipline.
Okay.
Kids coming in with a little less discipline.
Okay.
Because when I started, this was hearsay. We don't know if it was true or not. But one kid got in trouble with the principal.
Right.
And his father found out about it.
Right.
And supposedly his father put a toothbrush in his hand and said, "Go scrub that tobacco shit."
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of
discipline.
That was the kind of that. So at that point, if you were disciplined in school,
right,
you were probably disciplined again,
example.
and maybe worse at home.
Right.
And that gradually disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of teachers today, that they don't feel the support that they sometimes need. Not all the time. I mean, many parents are supportive, but I think this.
Yeah, I mean, the kids basically, if you were honest with the kids and you treated the kids fairly,
right,
there wasn't a whole lot of difference between teaching a kid in 1964 and teaching a kid in 1994.
Right.
Kids in terms of the relationships between
right,
the teacher and the kid, as long as somebody else didn't interfere with the relationship.
Right, right. What would you change about? Was there anything that you saw lacking, or that changed that you would, from your years of teaching wisdom? What would you do differently? What would you? If you were the czar of education in Connecticut, what would you change?
I think what I would do is I'd make everybody take a really close look at what they're doing and try to figure out how to make that work.
Okay, so self-evaluation.
Because the problem, see, what I saw over the years is, okay, this is a good idea.
Right.
Like open classroom was a good idea.
Right.
So East Granby took down the walls.
Right.
And then open classroom proved to be not such a hot idea, and East Granby put the walls back up.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So there's a constant. I think there's an attitude out there that there's always something better than what we have, and rather than make sure that what we have works,
right,
we're always going to look for something to replace it.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, so your philosophy is make the most with what you got.
Yeah.
Do the best with what you have. Right. In East Granby's case, they waited until the rest of the school was falling down before they put the walls back.
Yeah, but that was just one example.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. No, I know the philosophy. I understand.
There was another one where they had the so-called new math. Now I don't know if you were subjected to that in school or not.
No.
But there was where the experts thought that kids needed to know all of the structure and why they did certain things, and that they were going to do better, and that got a lot of them more confused than they were before. Right. And that disappeared.
Right. No, they have a new math by the way. My son's
they went through block scheduling.
Okay.
Which was, put the kids in a room for 90 minutes.
Right.
Okay. Can you concentrate for 90 minutes
instead of the 30 minutes? Yeah. No.
And saying that they're not saying that the real world isn't chopped up into 45-minute blocks.
Right.
It's not chopped into 90-minute blocks either.
No.
You may work really hard for 20 minutes at one time, and another time 2 hours.
So you've seen, I guess, to try to summarize what you've seen a lot of different things come and go. Right. But if you work within the structure that's in vogue at the time, that's the key. Right. Work with the hammer you got.
Yeah. There's just, there seems to be too much anxiousness to change. Okay. I mean, that doesn't mean you keep the same thing forever. Right. But it means that you make sure that you're doing the best you can with that before you replace it. Right.
There's nothing that you would, if you were in charge of the whole picture, there's nothing you would change immediately.
There's a lot of stuff in place.
Yeah, I know. I'm prodding.
For example, when they went through this whole education reform bill, right? They're talking about teacher preparation and teacher, evaluating teachers on the job and everything. Right. There's a system in place right now. Right. There was a system in place, and it was underfunded. Right. So why not just fund that? So we need something new. Why not just fund the old system?
Right. I see what you're saying. So your philosophy is more just sharpen what you got. Sharpen the
first.
And then see if that satisfies it, rather than revamping the whole system and confusing everybody every 3 or 4 years. Right. So you saw the whole cycle through it.
Yeah. Well, I was the head of the social studies department for 25 years or so. Okay. And this is an example of change. We used to teach U.S. history, one block. Right. September to June, you taught U.S. history. Right. And then somebody came up with an idea that U.S. history should be taught as mini courses. Right. So we taught one fourth of the year of U.S. history, then 3/4 of the year in little blocks. Okay. And then we found out that we said to ourselves, wait a minute, this doesn't seem to be working. Right. So then we went back to teaching a half a year. Right. The traditional way in 2 blocks. Now they're back to
one big block. So you saw the full cycle.
Yeah, the whole full cycle.
Yeah. And all those
and a lot of things have done that. Yeah. For example, in Suffield, they used to teach a different English course every 6 weeks.
Okay.
So you change teachers and change subject every 6 weeks.
Really? Wow.
They don't do that anymore either.
No, that's a little frantic. Yeah. So, if you basically, what do you think of the testing, the mandatory testing that's become involved? I mean, everything you hear lately is the last 5 or 6 years is this almost over testing. Where the kids, it seems like they're teaching to the test. And what are your feelings on the constant evaluation of the process like that?
Well, the testing may not be bad as if you can adapt the test training to what you're doing.
Okay.
So when I was teaching for a while, our department was responsible for something called the interdisciplinary section of the CAP test.
Okay.
So what we tried to do was we tried to incorporate the skills that they needed into the work that they were doing.
Okay.
Once or twice we do a special thing saying, this is the essay, this is the way you should structure it.
Right.
But we didn't harp on it. Our philosophy was the more we trained them, the angrier they'd get.
The kids, yeah.
And so that's the way we handled it.
Right.
I mean, I was in a meeting one time with I think it was in middle school, and they said, "What do you do for training?" And I said, "We try to hide it as much as possible."
Right.
But the problem with that testing is they treat those test results like they're testing the same kids every year.
Okay.
Like this year, sophomores in East Granby got certain scores on a CAP test. The same sophomores aren't going to be taking a CAP test next year.
Completely different group of kids.
It's a completely different group of kids.
Yeah.
Different, raw material for better. For better,
different issues,
for
different
lack of a better
learning
term.
strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
And some of the kids adapt to training better than others. Our first group on the CAP test supposedly was the worst group ever to come out of the middle school.
Okay.
But they thought we knew what we were talking about.
Right.
They were willing to follow instructions.
Okay.
That year, Suffield was number 3 in the state on the interdisciplinary section of the CAP test.
Okay.
Next year, we did the same training with a supposedly better group of kids.
Right.
Who thought they knew more than we did. 68.
Interesting. So you're basically what you're saying is same teachers, same curriculum, same process, completely different result based on the kids.
Yeah.
Based on the kids that came in and their attitude towards learning.
Yeah.
So that's really where the key.
I mean, it's probably a little bit easier with the CMT test because you can follow those kids.
Okay.
You
tracking them.
You test them in 4th grade, and then I guess you test them again in 6th grade.
Right.
And then you test them again in 8th grade.
Right.
All right. You're looking at the same kids.
Right.
So if they score 85% in the 4th grade and
all of a sudden
65% in the 6th grade, then you got to say, what's wrong here?
Yeah.
Because these are kids that were good 2 years ago, and all of a sudden they're not good.
Right. What's going on? Yeah. I think they test every year now. I don't think they miss a year.
No, I think they do. I'm not. Things might have changed because don't forget, I've been out for 12 years. So.
Yeah. Okay, so you graduate, you get a job, you're teaching in Suffield. Where are you living?
I lived in Hartford.
So you stayed in Hartford till 75?
Yeah, I had an apartment on Farmington Avenue for about 6 or 7 months.
Had you met your wife at this point, or?
I had met my wife in high school.
Okay. Did you get married before you went to college, or?
No, we got married the summer after, the summer I graduated.
Okay, so you graduated, you got married, you're living on Farmington Avenue.
Yeah, and then for about 6 months, and then we bought a house in the southwest end of the city, almost on the borderline between the Elmwood section of West Hartford.
Okay, I know. Yeah, so it's like White Street out that way.
White Street runs out into New Britain Avenue.
Okay, So you bought a house there, and did you have children at this point, or were you working on it?
My son was born in '65. My daughter was born in '70. So they were both born in Hartford.
Oh, okay. So you had a pretty busy 5 years there. You went from being a college student to being married with 2 kids and owning a house. And
Yeah. Plus going back to college to get my master's degree, so I could feed my family a little easier.
Okay. So you were working hard. Okay. So now you had a couple kids. You're living in Hartford. What inspired you to start looking elsewhere for a place to live? You wanted to get closer to your job, I assume. Was that part
Yeah,
of it?
well, we were looking at a lot of different places.
Okay.
Actually, my wife's preference would have been to move to Wethersfield and add 10 minutes to my commute. But
Okay. All right.
real estate comparables at that time were Wethersfield was too expensive.
Okay.
East Granby was affordable.
Really? Yeah. Probably the opposite now. Probably as expensive, if not more, in East Granby.
Yeah.
So you end up moving up closer to your work. Was your wife working, or was?
Not at that point.
Okay, so she was.
She went back to work after the kids were in school for a while.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly when, but you know.
So your children started school in Hartford.
Started school in Hartford. Yeah,
Okay.
my son was 10, I think, when we came out here. Yeah, my son was 10 when we moved out here, so he was in probably 5th grade.
Right. So he went to the school with no walls because they'd already
Right.
built that, right?
Right.
Or no, it's undivided classrooms or whatever you call. And okay, so what were your experiences? Let me get back to one thing. You were looking in different towns. What was your first impression of East Granby?
I wasn't looking in here. My wife found the house.
Okay, so she was doing the legwork. You were working. Yes.
I looked at some of the things, and
Yeah.
I came home from work one day, and she told me she found the house, and I said, "Where?" And she said, "East Granby." I said, "Yeah," because we had looked out here because I had one of the fellows that worked with me has lived here for a lot longer than I have.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Bob Cicchini.
The name rings a bell. I
Yeah,
don't know
well, he
personally.
was I think he was on the board of selectmen at one time, and he was principal of Suffield High School when
In
he
East Granby.
when he retired. But he lives across the street from Dave Kilbon, diagonally across the street
on
from
Heather?
Dave Kilbon.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So.
So I knew the area.
Right.
I knew the area. In fact, with my job with my father,
Okay.
we had put siding on quite a few of the houses, the new houses that were built in what was then called East Granby Estates.
Okay. Well, what's that? That's the new term to me. Where?
It's up North Main, just past Metacomet, with the Seneca Drive or something in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They call it East Granby Estates.
That was
It a
called East Granby Estates when it
Okay.
was built.
Right. All right. So you were familiar with the town, and so when you found out that she had found a house on Nutmeg, what was your input?
Fine.
You said,
I can live anywhere.
Works good for me.
I can live anywhere.
Okay. So you moved in '75. What if you were to compare and contrast '75 to 2012? What would you say the biggest change in town is?
In town,
Yeah.
there's a lot more stuff.
You mean in terms of infrastructure?
Well, there was no shopping center.
Okay. Right.
There was no shopping center where I think where Kane's Market is now, where Kane's place is across from JG's.
Right.
There was, I think the post office was there,
Okay.
and it wasn't very big.
Right.
The post office was there.
I think a one-room post office.
Yeah, there was something where contractors' home appliances is. There was something else there.
Okay.
The building was there, but there was some other business.
Okay.
The building that's JG's was Cumberland Farms. I think it was Cumberland Farms and a laundromat when we moved in.
Okay, so it was a little strip mall.
I know half of it was Cumberland Farms, and I think I vaguely remember the other half being a laundromat. And then
I think the laundromat was where was further up, where the nail place is and stuff across from. But anyway, so that was different. It was much less developed.
yeah, and then JG's got part of the building. JG's got the whole building.
Okay.
We have a post office, community center.
So that whole center complex.
Just everything
is
yeah. I think just about all of that stuff has been.
Is there anything that you think could have been done differently in that time that you would have liked to see? I mean, it's a fairly standard development of a town center. I mean, it's nothing all that contentious. Is there anything that you would like to see different down there? Or?
No, I don't think there's.
Is there anything you'd like to see in town that isn't here? If you had like Joe Sinicrope.
Disappointed when the hardware store left.
Oh, really? When was that? I mean, where was that?
In the shopping center. I think where the advertising place is at the very end,
okay.
Post office end.
All right.
It was a big store.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah, it was two stores. You know, two of their sections
2 units
wide.
Combined. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
What was the brand? What was it? It's just as regular. Was it True Value or was it?
I know it was an orange sign. It wasn't True Value.
Okay. All right. So that was handy to have, especially.
Yeah, but they were pretty good, but they didn't. They eventually went out of business.
Now you mentioned that you did continue to do building even when you were teaching or in contracting, and you started your own company. And so that I guess a hardware store would be nice to have on your way to whatever job you're going to. But what did you actually do in that profession? What were you actually doing?
In the building business?
Yeah. What was your business while you were teaching? What did
just about anything that you wanted me to do on your house.
So you brought all
except for plumbing and major electrical.
Okay.
Because when you did siding, you always had to do some kind of minor electrical stuff.
You always had to move some plug, right? Yeah.
But I've done everything. You know, I've done roofing, siding, gutters, replacement windows. Built a house-size addition.
Okay. So soup to nuts, you've pretty much
done just about everything.
Yeah. Which is a pretty handy guy to have around. I mean,
yeah, I don't have to call too many people at my house.
No. The other thing is that that gives you a lot of latitude into what you can do. I mean, there's always somebody's always looking to have some job done. You weren't limited. So that you worked pretty hard. I mean, you were a teacher full time, and didn't you do something with athletics in the school?
Oh yeah, I was a coach.
Okay. What did you coach?
I started out as a track coach.
Okay.
Tom Howard got me involved in track coaching. He started the Suffield High School track program.
Okay.
And then the fellow he started it with went off to teach art at the University of Hartford, and
right.
Somehow he found out that I did track in Hartford. Well, he was from Hartford too. He went to Hartford Public High School.
Yeah, he was on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he went to Hartford Public. So he got me involved in 1967.
Okay.
So I coached outdoor track from 67 to about 72 or so. Then we did outdoor track and indoor track.
Okay.
And then for about 3 or 4 years in the middle to late 70s, I did cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track.
Oh wow! So you ran
I coached 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And then I gave up cross country and only did the 2 track seasons.
Okay.
And since I've retired, I'm now down to only doing 1 track season.
So you still coach at Suffield?
I'm still coaching. Yeah, I just coach. I just coach the indoor season now.
So you've kept your hat in the ring over there too, huh? So you've had several things going on.
Oh yeah. Well, I was the East Granby indoor track coach for a while. I mean,
were you?
Well, what happened is a lot of the schools knew we had an indoor track program.
Right.
So the athletic director would call up and say, "Hey, I've got 4 kids that want to train for track.
Right.
Can they train with you?" So in 2000 maybe, the East Granby girls 4x800 relay team beat my 4x800 relay team in a state meet, and I trained both teams.
Oh no, that must have been quite. How do you explain that one? Well, I guess everybody tried their hardest, right? So, okay, so you taught for quite 36 years. You were doing your contracting business, and you had a family in the process. Who are your children? What are your children's names? And you mentioned them earlier, but what are your?
David and Jean.
David and Jean. Now they went to school in East Granby, and had a pretty satisfactory
Yeah,
experience.
they both graduated from East Granby High School.
Okay. Where did they go on to?
David went to Hofstra University,
Okay.
and he's a retail executive now.
Where does he live?
He lives on Long Island.
Okay.
He went to school on Long Island and never came home.
Okay. That's a good thing, I guess. Right? It means he was successful. And your daughter?
And my daughter went to Colorado State for a year.
Okay.
St. Joseph's College in West Hartford before it became a university.
Yeah, just recently.
And she did a semester in the University of New South Wales, so she was all over the place.
I guess so, yeah.
She's now working for Albertus Magnus College.
Okay. And grandkids?
I have a 16-year-old grandson and a 14-year-old granddaughter.
What are their names?
Dakota and Sierra.
Okay. Those are easy to remember.
Funny story about that. They came in to see me one day at school.
Right.
They came into one of my classes and they said hello and they left. And one of the kids says to me, "What are their names?" And I says, "Dakota and Sierra." And a wise guy in the back row says, "Yeah, you got a car and a truck." That's when Sierra was an Oldsmobile.
That's right. Yeah, that's funny. Easy to remember anyway, right? So, you getting back to East Granby, when you were you were living here since '75. Is there anything that you saw that you would like to see in town that didn't happen? I mean, or anything that? I mean, I guess the hardware store would be nice to have.
I think probably regionalization of the school system would have been a good idea.
Okay. That was an opportunity that you think would have been.
Yeah, I don't think it was East Granby's fault either.
Right.
I think they tried to do it twice.
Right.
And I think it was Suffield opting out of the deal both times.
Okay, so it was Suffield wasn't Granby involved in one of those?
I don't think so. Not that I know of. It's possible.
Okay. All right.
It's possible, but I know there was extensive talk with Suffield at one point.
Okay.
And that fell apart. And I thought there was another round that more recently, and I think that fell apart too.
Okay. If you had that magic wand for the town, what would you do? If you could make one change in town, or one, it could be anything from a super Home Depot in the center to a.
No, I think things have changed so that people are a little bit more forward-looking about what they think should go on in town.
Okay.
For example, Dunkin' Donuts finally got a drive-through.
Right.
Where the building had a drive-through for 20 years or something, and
it had to get approved.
And there seemed to be some not too realistic standards being applied there, and that became more realistic.
Yeah.
Things like the Economic Development Commission promoting the farmers market and getting attracting more people down to see what's available.
Right. So you feel that there's nothing you like the direction.
No, I'm
sure there's more.
I'm sure we can use a lot more in terms of economic development.
Yeah.
Like if we had a place for 1 million square foot warehouse that wouldn't offend anybody, we'd probably love to have it here.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think isn't that always a challenge in development? You want the development, but you don't want to have to look at it sometimes. And the other thing is, you want the development, but you don't want it to be on your terms as a town. That's not always. That's a tough mix. So I guess the way that it's progressed through the last 15 or 20 years, you're fairly happy with, though.
Yeah. It seems to be going in a positive direction.
Okay. Now, you've been here long enough. Are there any characters that you remember from your early days here in town? I mean, you were fairly busy, but is there any specific folks that you remember leaving a lasting impact on you?
No real characters that I can remember.
Okay.
So I can remember a lot of names, but they're not because they were real characters.
I don't mean it in a negative or positive way, but just people that you remember.
I can remember. It seemed like Frank Rothammer was the first selectman for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, his name comes up a lot.
Yeah, he was here. He was here for quite a while.
He seemed like he was fairly well respected too. I mean, most people.
Well, you don't last a number of terms as first selectman if you don't have some respect.
That's true. Yeah, in a small town,
it's not like
they'll throw you out.
It's not like if you're a congressman or something. You can get by offending a few people.
Yeah.
Or sometimes even more than a few people, but you can't do that on a local level.
No, the word gets around pretty quick. You've served in different positions in town. You were on the Board of Finance, and you were was there any other civic stuff that you did locally that?
I was on economic development for a while.
Okay. Did you have any reflections from any of that? Those two posts that you held that you feel?
Well, see, I was on economic development at the time where there seemed to be resistance to doing things in other places.
Okay.
Like when I was on economic development, I don't remember what year it was, but I remember them discussing the drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
And I've been off economic development for a long time.
Right.
And the drive-through been there about a year.
It's a couple years now. Yeah. I remember when the vote came up.
There were a few things like that where there seemed to be a few unrealistic expectations for some things, and some things that were not quite common sense in other areas.
Right.
Like the triangle at School Street, which is still undeveloped.
Oh, at the point.
Yeah.
I can imagine I was never on economic development, but I can imagine a certain focus in town on certain obvious developable spots.
Yeah. Well, that thing went through. That thing went through. Somebody thought there should be a chain restaurant there, which of course is nowhere near enough traffic,
right,
or anything else. But a gas station and a convenience store wasn't good enough. And
right.
So
inevitably, that's what got approved.
There's still weeds and a space
sign.
available sign
For sale. Actually, they did get an approval. They got an approval for what you described, the combination place, but it just as the economy crashed.
Right.
So,
Well, everything is now.
Somebody will come along at some point and put a gas station or something there. So.
Well, I mean, there's got to be a pretty good traffic count there.
Yeah.
It's got to be a good location for something.
Right. Just speaking of that whole kind of philosophy, the big problem in East Granby is critical mass. There's not enough people living. There's a certain formula they use, and I'm sure you guys talked about this on economic development, that certain number of people have to live within a certain range. And we're just, most of the population clusters are just outside of that range. So it doesn't, but I don't think.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like if you ran like
a circle,
a 5 or 8 or 10 mile radius or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You'd get practically no population in Suffield, and yet Suffield's what three times as big as East Granby population wise.
Yeah, but
none of the population is near East Granby.
But you won't get a lot of chains coming in to that sort of thing. Yeah, I know it's tough. I always thought it'd be a great place for like a Walgreens or something. Seems like that. They're almost like little stores now, so it kind of serve a lot of purpose. But hey, we can dream, right? So any other wisdom from your terms on different boards that you want to share?
Well, I think from what I saw in the time I was on the Board of Finance, it seemed as though there was a definite attempt on the part of the town, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen to try to spend the town's money wisely.
Right.
And you don't always find that.
You feel like it's a fairly well managed town.
Well, see, I'm concerned about how much taxes I pay.
Yeah.
But my concern diminishes as I get closer to the local level.
Right.
Because at the local level, I'm pretty sure
it's going.
That I know where it's going.
That's a good point. Very valid point. Yeah.
I always try to I do a mental calculation. I have 2 kids go through 12 years of school.
Right.
It's going to take an awful long time for their tuition to get paid back.
That's right. That's a very good point.
So that was a measure I used for myself.
So you weren't obsessed with it. You weren't.
No, I was never. I never really got upset about local taxes.
Right. You felt like you were getting.
I mean, when there are other kinds of taxes that I'm not too happy about. But,
right.
But I think that at the local level, especially in probably a town of 10 or 12,000 or less,
right,
you're going to get things managed pretty well.
It's pretty, and if it's not, people see it.
Yeah,
you can't hide it. Yeah, no, I agree. I've always felt it was a very effective or efficiently run town. Now you have the unique perspective of now being retired for 12 years. 2000, you said you retired?
Right.
From semi-retired, because you've been very active. What if you were giving advice to your grandkids or to your children of that age today? What would that be? What would the you've gone from growing up, you've had your career, you've raised kids, and now you're retired for a span here. What advice would you give to kids growing up today, if there's anything that could?
I really don't think it's too much different than the advice people would have given me.
Okay.
Yeah. Work hard. Yep. Make sure you get as much benefit out of your education as you can.
Okay. And
manage your money well.
Okay.
I don't think there's any magic answers.
That's probably the same advice they would have given in ancient Greece, right? Right. I mean, there's not much changes,
No, just you have to. I mean, when you're going through your education, a lot of times you're not thinking about that.
Right.
A lot of times in college, there's more fun than there is education.
Right.
But you gotta at some point you gotta say, okay,
time to be serious.
This is going to be worth it later on. I got to do it.
Right. So you're a big proponent of higher education, if it fits.
Some kind of education.
Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think people can just simply learn an awful lot as a kid just going to work for a home improvement contractor like me.
Exactly. Right.
That's what I used to do. I used to hire my students.
Right.
Used to hire some of my students for summers.
Right.
Both two of the guys I had, in fact, the only two students I ever hired are both doing full-time work in that field.
Right. So you were in your own little mini vocational school.
And one of them credited me with his career choice.
Good for him. Yeah, but I mean, that's a good career. Financially, stability-wise, as long as you can manage running your own business.
It's not boring.
It's definitely not boring, and there's never a shortage of work. I mean, it goes through its ups and downs, but you're always going to have something out there if you're willing to work.
Yeah, almost any job where you end up working with your hands is a problem-solving job,
right?
And it's not repetitive.
No.
I mean, even automobiles aren't repetitive, right?
No, it's a new problem every day. You think when you think you know it, it changes.
Right.
So yeah, that's great. When you were teaching, were any stories from that time that you find yourself repeating about certain students, or not to be personal about it, but if there's any remarkable things that you remember from your career?
That's interesting. Well, some people were really successful. One of my athletes became a national champion, 5-time national champion in Division III in track.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment.
He tried to make the Olympic marathon team this year, but didn't make it.
Oh, this year?
This year, yeah.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Yeah. But it's funny the way you look at different kids. We had, I think it was probably in the early 70s. The early 70s, when a lot of the kids were into smoking funny cigarettes and
things other than scholastics,
things like that. But the funny thing about that group of kids was that they were able to think really well, and they were interested in stuff.
Right.
Like we had a movie called The Cube. It was something that was on, I know, NBC TV.
Okay.
Probably back in the '60s, and we used to show that movie in our classes.
Right.
And with one group of kids, they actually asked us if they could come back after school to watch that movie. And we spent 2 or 3 hours after school watching that movie and discussing and trying to figure out what that movie was about.
Really? So that was on their own initiative?
On their own initiative. Now,
Yeah.
I can't imagine walking into a classroom with something like that today and having that kind of response.
Do you think that that's why that generation's experience has kind of transcended the last 30, 40 years? I mean, that whole era, there was a 5 or 6 year span, the late 60s, early 70s, when the doors were just blown wide open.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but there were, it was an interesting period. It was an interesting period of time.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the kids were just more comfortable kind of asking for that sort of? I mean, what would you don't know the difference. It just was an observation.
I have no idea. I mean, that had to be like probably 30 years ago, 35 years ago.
Those funny cigarettes there were.
I mean, I can remember that,
Yeah.
I can remember that instance. It's one that
Sticks out.
it's one that really sticks out.
Yeah. Wow. I guess you don't forget moments like that when it's so different from the rest of your career. Any other? I mean, just on that last comment you made about the former athlete that was trying to get on the Olympic marathon. When you get kids that are athletically kind of
Gifted,
for lack of, I'm trying to think of a way to put it, but is that apparent? Do you, as a coach, does it kind of jump out at you?
You can pretty much.
Or
tell.
does it evolve over there?
No, you can. With some of them it evolves. With some of them it's there right away.
So there's a variation.
For example, I had a girl in 2000.
Yeah.
As a freshman.
Okay.
Who was a double state champion indoors.
Right.
And she ran a race I'll never forget. She ran a 2-mile race.
Okay.
Which was 8 laps around the track. No, 16 laps around the track.
Okay.
At the end of lap 2, she was last.
Okay.
But watching that race, you could see her gradually moving up, and you could say, and with 2 or 3 laps to go, I just turned to somebody and said, she's going to win.
Amazing, huh?
And she did.
Huh. So
there's a freshman at Suffield now that in the state meet broke the record of the kid who was a 5-time national champion.
Oh, so you're going to watch them closely.
He's a freshman.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. So the problem there, from my perspective as a coach, is making sure he's not pushed too hard too early.
Okay. So it's a balance.
Yeah. Well, my philosophy is at the end of the season, I'd rather wonder whether I should have trained somebody harder than know that I trained them too hard.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough feeling. Yeah, right. You push too hard, right? Yeah. Can't take that back.
No.
All right. So, well, it's been a pleasure having you here tonight, Joe. You bring a fascinating story to our viewers, and I'd like to thank our viewing audience for joining us as we shared the story of Joseph Sinicrope of East Granby. Once again, today's date is August 4th, 2012. This is Reflections on East Granby, and I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight.